activities. Suddenly, nothing happened. Just ambiguity. No recollection, no clarity, no explanation. It sounds insightful at first, even empathetic. However, the atmosphere in the room shifts as soon as those words are spoken. The host looks away from the screen because something is off rather than because they are exhausted. His voice becomes tense. He claims that what he is hearing bothers him. It appears incomplete in a way that is deliberate, perfectly ambiguous, and meticulously calibrated, not because it hurts. Not enough information to stop interpretation, but just enough to encourage it. And that's where the true issue starts. He says nothing. He doesn't pursue anger. Rather, he begins carefully tugging at the thread. He raises concerns about the timeline, the places, the gaps that are never filled, the reasons why some events are highlighted while others are completely removed, and the reasons why some names are cited while others are noticeably missing. The pivotal line is then delivered. Why does the story continually flow in one direction if she is genuinely unaware of what transpired that evening? The conversation is blown up by that one inquiry. The internet ignites in a matter of minutes. The comment sections are packed, videos are shared again. Every hesitation, delay, word selected, and word dropped is scrutinized by viewers. Facts are formed after headlines. Assumptions are the result of rumors. It's frightening how quickly speculation turns into certainty. A claim at the core of it all goes viral more quickly than the actual interview. After spending the night with Mendeecees, the medics verified that a major incident had occurred. However, there is an issue. In the video, no doctor mentions that. There's no clear medical confirmation. There is no diagnosis displayed. All that's left is a narrative and a void for the audience to fill. The host doesn't yell. He doesn't make accusations. Rather, he bends closer. He starts to speak more clearly rather than angrily. Rather than sensationalizing the tale, he starts piecemeal rebuilding the night in order to comprehend how drastically it departs from reality. He clarifies that uncertainty does not dispel suspicions. It gives it vigor because the audience loses objectivity when someone openly claims they have no idea what happened while detailing a terrible injury. They look for answers. They recognize villains. They link names to specific historical periods. Moreover, once that process starts, it never ends. He stops and then continues. Then he questions the basis of the entire narrative. He claims that his memories of the birthday party and the informal celebration do not match the account Tamar gave, logically, not in terms of tone or emotion. He claims that there was no birthday event as stated, no scheduled celebration, and no intention to honor any specific person. He claims that the birthday story is false. Instead, he discusses something much more commonplace: restaurants closing, people calling late at night in search of food, going through the night in a disrespectful manner, and last-minute changes to plans. There was nothing noteworthy or structured, just individuals moving around until the atmosphere changed. It had nothing to do with a fight or a quarrel, but rather with who showed up. He claims that Mendeecees unexpectedly turned up. Neither he nor the original plan called for it. He claims that everything changed because of that presence. He is cautious before speaking. He prioritizes time rather than making straight allegations. The identical pattern has already been observed, he notes. When certain individuals joined, the atmosphere changed and events felt suddenly packed. He acknowledges a disturbing truth. He claims that Tamar and Mendeecees' relationship never made him feel at ease, especially when it happened in front of him. The intimacy, the physical familiarity, and the intensity didn't seem right. Intimacy in public and regular interactions that weaken boundaries. He claims that rather than because it seemed right, he chose to ignore it at the moment, since facing it would have caused turmoil that he didn't want. He then discusses the incident that completely altered his choice. He didn't walk upstairs when they were left off at Tamar's house because he felt alienated by what he had seen, not because he was thoughtless or indifferent. He explained how he witnessed Tamar and Mendeecees sharing a kiss while driving. He claims that a line was crossed at that very moment, socially rather than morally. He didn't want to get involved because whatever was going on between them seemed private. After that, he returned home. Since his departure caused the plot to divide in two, that seemingly straightforward choice became the cornerstone of everything that transpired after. Tamar later said that she was injured and unsure of what had happened when she woke up. However, he insisted that he didn't see anything, that he wasn't there, and that he couldn't comment on anything he hadn't seen. The internet kept these two realities apart. Evidence was substituted with conjecture. Being close turned into a duty. The silence was filled by guilt. He talks of witnessing it in real time. The messages are pouring in. Concern hides accusations. He was asked why he didn't step in, why he didn't go upstairs, and why he didn't stand up for her. That's when annoyance becomes rage. He clarifies that he was unable to shield someone from something he had not witnessed. He couldn't explain something that didn't happen to him. However, the story continued to captivate him, as though he were a part of it just by being close. He clarifies one thing: he is aware of Tamar's suffering. She was hurt, he acknowledges. He opposes the story's unchecked dissemination. The manner implication was permitted to carry out the task of accusation, and the way ambiguity was disclosed to the public without cause. And that's where the really harm started. Even after he gives an explanation for his departure, the tension still exists. As the question of his whereabouts is resolved, the next one emerges like an unavoidable shadow, making it thicker. Why did the tale still change when you returned home? He enters this place slowly. He avoids it with caution, not because he fears the truth, but because he knows that once shards are acquired, they can be used as weapons. He is aware that the audience is not picking up on the subtleties. They are keeping an ear out for a villain. They are looking for a neat ending with just one name that they can emphasize in red. And he clarifies that's precisely why things went out of control. He claims to have seen a change in empathy in real time. 10 headlines are generated from one interview. One hazy memory, it has been verified by the time it reaches social media. The words "I don't know" cease to suggest uncertainty, and begin to function like a match in petrol, because the internet interprets someone's statement that they don't know what happened but describe a noteworthy aftermath as permission to complete the story on their behalf. It also completes it quickly. He claims that this is the point at which the framing becomes risky. It wasn't because Tamar recounted her narrative. Rather, it was because she did so in a way that generated unmanageable momentum. She described anguish, fear, and bewilderment before pausing. Additionally, he contends that the stopping point was not neutral, it was structural. It created a framework for the narrative that caused the general audience to make assumptions. In a calming voice, he leans closer and says something that resonates more deeply. Ambiguity is not innocuous, because it doesn't soothe people. It is combustible. As a result, they become active. Activation happens after that, and it's not only in a comment section. It becomes pressure. It becomes a demand. Anyone whose name has any connection to the night is subject to accusations. Birthday celebration in the manner that it was planned. The night was typical, spontaneous, and constantly shifting. Mendeecees popped out of nowhere. He felt uneasy with the dynamic. He witnessed them sharing a kiss. He claims that because connotations more successfully satiate emotional hunger than facts. The internet didn't give a damn about those facts. Then he says something terrible in a low voice. He claims that he requested to be excluded. He claims that he gave Tamar explicit instructions to cease mentioning him, cease communicating with him, and cease engaging him in the consequences of an incident for which he was not present. He says the request was denied, and he made the decision to publicly set a limit when his name started appearing in stories. He understands the negative effects of barriers. When the other person is seen as a victim, boundaries sound harsh. He was aware of that. He was aware that saying, "Leave me alone," might come across as harsh to an audience that was already deeply committed. However, he claims that being cruel would have meant acting as though he knew what had happened, when in fact, he didn't. It would have been cruel, he claims, to feed the machine, because someone had to endure the consequences of his rejection. Story mechanics made him the adversary rather than his axe. This is where he pauses, and you can know what he's saying without him having to say it. That no one ever searched the internet for the truth. It was looking for an emotion, and once it discovered one, it secured the narrative. The mechanism also penalizes you if you attempt to move the plot after it has been locked. He claims that at that moment, this ceased to be personal and instead became structural, a pattern, and a warning not just about Tamar or Mendeecees, but also about what happens when someone shares a portion of a tale in public and then allows the audience finish it, particularly when there is actual suffering involved. He claims that people were not harmed by the story just because of what was said. People were harmed by what was not said. Furthermore, the story had solidified like concrete by the time anyone attempted to explain it. Here, the tone shifts once more. Not colder, not angrier, not louder. At this point, the topic is replaced with something else, and loses its emotional resonance. Accuracy. He is no longer responding to criticism directed at him. He is no longer standing up for his moral convictions. He is behaving in a riskier way. The story is being rewritten by him, not the version that went viral on the internet. The sequence of events as they actually occurred, free of implication and reconstructed from what can be confirmed, rather than the version produced by headlines. Because he now has a very crucial understanding. The conclusion of the narrative has already been determined by the internet. The midsection failed. It didn't wait for background information. It proceeded directly to judgment. He returns to the timeline, which is the only location where clarity is still present. He claims that Tamar's speech was never the main problem, but rather the way she spoke and, more crucially, what she omitted while the outside world filled in the blanks. There were no accusations in the interview, but there were also no boundaries. Regardless of the facts, the tale gained popularity because it unleashed a lot of emotion, which he claims is everything on the internet. Truth becomes optional once a story begins to flow. He talks of seeing the reaction develop in real time like a cyclone. First comes worry, then empathy, then indignation, and lastly confidence. Nobody ever paused to consider if they truly understood what had transpired, because it is easier to presume that someone else possesses information than to live in ambiguity. They concluded that knowledge existed someplace even though they had never seen it. He claims that because waiting does not feel respectable, the public did not wait for clarification. It seems to be passive, which is not encouraged in the online community. It commends decisiveness even in the absence of any motivation. He makes a brief but important point. Tamar kept what had occurred to her a secret. She didn't mention any particular act. She did not identify the offender. She did not describe a chronology. She talked about what happened next. Fear, bewilderment, agony, and then she abruptly stopped. He claims that everything was altered by that halting point, because the audience will always find a cause when someone recounts disastrous outcomes without providing one. Moreover, existing names regardless of their validity become the justification. He said, "I don't know what happened, and that was the start of it all." Because mistrust is not diminished by the mix of severity and ambiguity, it is multiplied. Furthermore, distrust seldom lets go once it is attached to a name. He then discusses the presumption that infuriated him the most, the notion that he must be concealing something because he didn't log on right away. He claims that logic was beyond his comprehension. He was genuinely unaware of what had transpired. What precisely was he attempting to convey? Then, he would be charged with falsification if he conjectured. He would come out as impolite if he refused. He would be charged with downplaying trauma if he questioned the narrative. There was no right answer, so he decided to remain silent. Moreover, he claims that silence is viewed online as proof of guilt rather than innocence. He refers to it as a conundrum. You appear more suspicious the more cautious you are. And suddenly he realized he had grasped a crucial concept. It was not neutral to be silent. It was intentionally causing him pain. He made the decision to speak at that precise moment, not to disparage Tamar or change her experience, but to correct what he perceived to be an inaccurate portrayal of himself. He returns his attention to the darkness in a soulless, robotic manner. He restates the information. He departed. Tamar headed upstairs. There were Mendeecees and someone else. He wasn't. He calls attention to this since, in his opinion, it is information that has never been presented in public. He failed to answer questions about what he observed and knew. Nobody inquired as to who was present. He claims that the unregulated growth of speculation was caused by this omission, because the story would have had to slow down if the public had been made to concentrate on who was upstairs. Verification would have been necessary if you had slowed down. Momentum would have been hampered by verification. As a result, the story completely avoided answering that question. Here, clearly unsure of what to say, he pauses. Then he acknowledges a challenging reality. He was aware that he would be accused of being irresponsible, attention-seeking, and attempting to shift the blame as soon as he spoke. He agreed that beforehand, he could not bear to be quietly turned into a villain, while others remained unaware. He claims that quiet felt like capitulation because of this imbalance. He then discusses how Tamar's account changed following the first interview. He observes how phrases like "woke up in a pool of blood" are added and how the imagery becomes more intense. The story, how the near-death implication took over talks. He acknowledges the emotional significance of such remarks once more. He challenges the order. He contends that before making a speech in front of an audience, someone who genuinely thought they were going to die would instinctively look for solutions right away to discover the truth. Rather, there was a delay, and he claims that distortion results from delays. Uncertainty becomes more of an assumption the longer it lasts in public. He claims that at this point, uncertainty solidified into mistrust, because people stop looking for answers and start coming up with their own when questions go unanswered for a long period. He claims that unresolved stories shouldn't be posted online, requires a conclusion. In situations where none is offered, it also offers closure. The narrative then shifted from Tamar's experience to the joy of the audience. Roles started to emerge. He claims bystander, accomplice, villain, and victim. And when duties are assigned, the facts become problematic. He claims that even after he left the neighborhood, his name was still associated with the incident because he had been there. Earlier in the evening, he then talks about a persistent problem that had been bothering him before it was made public. Mendeecees and Tamar's connection. He is cautious once more. He doesn't make accusations. He is not overly dramatic. He talks about what he observed: frequent intimacy, physical familiarity, and exchanges that exceeded a mental threshold not once, not by accident, but consistently. He claims that because confronting it would have created conflict, he chose to ignore it for the time being because sometimes, it's simpler to ignore something that doesn't seem right than to deal with it. However, he acknowledges that this choice came back to haunt him because the same intimacy was part of the public speculation when the story went viral. They kept asking